What is going on, everybody? Today I will be responding to your guys' college football hot takes. We do this video just about every week, and it is one of my favorite videos to make because I love interacting with other college football fans. So if you guys want to be a part of this video, then just look out for my YouTube community post asking for your guys' hot takes, because you guys can leave your hot takes there. But as always, before we get into reading these hot takes, let me remind you guys to like the video and also subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. And if you guys love college football, then you'll love this channel, because we upload a ton of college football content and we basically cover everything on this channel. So definitely consider subscribing, and also consider joining my Discord server down in the description below. But without further ado, let's get into reading these hot takes. This first person says Kyle McCord isn't instantly Syracuses' starter right away. Garrett Shrader could easily win the starting job. In my opinion, he played pretty good last year and carried some games like the game against Purdue. I think Kyle McCord will still win it since I think he's good enough to do it, but it's not 100% his job. Garrett Shrader actually played his last game for Syracuse as a fifth-year senior, so he will not be back next season. And I think Syracuse went out and got a solid replacement for Garrett Shrader. Kyle McCord is a solid quarterback, but he couldn't get the job done at Ohio State, because Ohio State wants to be great, not just good. And Syracuse only won 6 games last season. So all they need is a solid quarterback who could help elevate them to the next level. Syracuse could be a solid team in the ACC next season with all the talent returning. They are top 10 in the country for return and production, and they also have a top 5 transfer portal class. Garrett Shrader had some decent games last season, but he was too inconsistent, and I don't think he was that great. And I think Kyle McCord could be better because he will not have a bunch of pressure on him playing for Syracuse like he did for Ohio State. Kyle McCord will probably have to earn his starting spot, but this is definitely Kyle McCord's team going forward. And imagine if Kyle McCord gets even better in 2024, because it really wasn't that bad last season. He could possibly be one of the top quarterbacks in the ACC if he fits into the system and scheme at Syracuse. So I am interested to see how good the Syracuse team could be with Kyle McCord at quarterback. This next person says Missouri has the best offense in the SEC. Luther Burden and Brady Cook are dangerous. I actually watched Missouri football spring game, and even though they were playing one-hand touch football and not really going 100% on the field, I think it is safe to say that the receiving core for Missouri is very dangerous, and it is deep. They return Luther Burden, Theo Weiss Jr., and Mookie Cooper, but then you also have Marquise Johnson, who brings speed to the table, and he could possibly elevate his game in 2024, and he could be a surprise impact player for this Missouri team. You also have Miller and Blood, who had some decent plays in the spring game, and the receiving core for this team returns a lot of talent. And there's not just a couple of good receivers. They have at least 4 to 5 really good receivers, and Luther Burden is one of the best receivers in the country. And of course, the cherry on top of all of this is that they return Brady Cook at quarterback, who will continue to improve at quarterback for this team, and he is one of the top quarterbacks in the SEC. They could very well have the best passing attack in the country at the very least. I know they lost Cody Schrader at running back, but they also brought in 2 very solid running backs from Group of 5 schools, with Marcus Carroll and Nate Noel, who transferred over, and they could split reps. The offense returns a lot, and I'm excited to see how good this Missouri offense could be in 2024. It will also be tough at the line of scrimmage again, and 4-star offensive tackle Caden Green should really help out that left side of the offensive line. Ole Miss, Alabama, Texas, and Georgia could also have very good offenses. The SEC isn't just a defensive conference. The offenses in the SEC are going to be stacked next season, but I do think Missouri will be near the top of the SEC in points per game, and that passing attack for Missouri could be very dangerous. But also, don't sleep on the new running back transfers. This next person says Dillon Gabriel and Tess Johnson will be the #1 quarterback receiver duo in all of college football. Dillon Gabriel wins the Heisman and Tess wins the Biletnikoff. If we're going to talk about the best offenses in college football, obviously you have to talk about the Oregon Ducks. They lost some NFL talent on the offensive side, most importantly Bo Nix, who was a Heisman finalist and the most experienced college football player of all time. But Oregon quickly replaced all those pieces in the transfer portal. They didn't just replace them, they added even more talent to their roster, and they could level up even more in 2024. They picked up probably the best quarterback out of the transfer portal with Dillon Gabriel joining the team. Dillon Gabriel reminds me a lot of Marcus Mariota, who helped lead Oregon to a national championship a decade ago. Dillon Gabriel has a chance to break many FBS records next season because of how long he has played the sport. They also brought in new additions on defense and brought in the #1 receiver in the transfer portal, Evan Stewart, along with having a top 5 recruiting class. But of course, they returned Tess Johnson, and Tess Johnson had over 1,000 receiving yards last season, and Tess Johnson will be back, and that is huge for this already loaded receiving room. Tess Johnson really didn't get going until the second half of last season, and he is going to probably be that top receiver for Oregon next season if it isn't Evan Stewart. I could see a scenario where Dillon Gabriel wins the Heisman and Tess Johnson wins the Biletnikoff. They both have a lot of upside heading into next season. Dillon Gabriel should fit into the system at Oregon, and he's never passed for under 3,000 yards in a season if you don't count the 2020 season that was shortened. Tess Johnson really had a breakout season in the second half of last season as well. And now you give Tess Johnson a full season with more confidence in himself, and if he gets going early in this season, he could be the leading receiver in the country, and I wouldn't be shocked at all. If you don't believe me, just look at the numbers he put up in the second half of last season. In 4 of his last 6 games, he had 125 or more receiving yards. He had 180 against Cal and 172 against Liberty. The second half of last season was incredible for Tess Johnson, and he is a very underrated receiver heading into next season for this Oregon team. This next person says every conference should get represented in the playoff, from SEC to MAC, kind of like March Madness, but I think it is the furthest the expansion should go. I honestly disagree with this statement because that would be letting way too many group of 5 teams in, and then in that case the playoffs wouldn't be that competitive. The only way this could happen is if the playoffs expanded and had a March Madness-like tournament, but college football doesn't need a big playoff like college basketball. Upsets wouldn't happen as much, and a March Madness in college football could be a fun idea, but it would be very underwhelming and I don't think it would work because college football is a completely different sport from college basketball. We need the regular season of college football to mean the most it can. I really don't want to see the playoff expand any number past 16 teams, so I really don't like this idea at all if I'm being honest. We love college football because of how much the regular season means, and I don't want to see that get ruined because a college football regular season is already pretty short compared to college basketball. This next person says, Delaware will be a good team first season in the FBS. Delaware will be joining the FBS in 2025, and I'm not going to lie, I don't really watch FCS football at all, but Delaware has been a solid FCS team. They won 8+ games in the past 2 seasons with a new head coach Ryan Carty. It looks like Delaware is trending up, and they could be pretty competitive in the Conference USA in 2025 and going forward. The Conference USA is going to be a pretty easy conference, and it will be pretty easy competition for Delaware. They made it to the second round of the FCS playoffs the past 2 seasons, and they also beat Navy in 2022. So that is an FBS win on the track record for Delaware within the last couple of seasons. So the track record is pretty nice with head coach Ryan Carty. So I could see them being good in year 1 at the FBS level. Maybe they have a winning season, but we shall see. This next person says, Deion Sanders is a bad coach. He's a great recruiter and motivator, but he really only thrived at Jackson State because of how much talent his team had compared to other FCS teams and HBCUs. That's not a jab at HBCUs, that's just the truth. And now the only reason his team has expectations is because of how talented his team is. He was exposed against Colorado State. After that, the better coaches in the Pac-12 just dominated him. It kind of seems like he just wants the attention from the media. Now I'm not going to go too far in detail with this because I'm not a Deion Sanders hater and I think Colorado is still improving from where they were in 2022 when they went 1-11. But Deion Sanders is such a big name that he shouldn't be getting the 66th best class in the nation recruiting-wise. And I wouldn't say he is a great recruiter. Don't get me wrong, he brought in the #1 offensive tackle Jordan Seaton, and the quality of the players that he has picked up have been very high, but he only has 8 recruits for Colorado's 2024 class, and he doesn't do in-home visits, which is kind of weird if you ask me. He has done a very solid job in the transfer portal, but I really feel like if he did put more effort into building relationships with recruits and actually did in-home visits, he could probably have a top 25 class or even better because of how big of a name he is alone. If Deion Sanders wasn't such a big name, I don't think this Colorado team would be trending up, and I'm just going to be honest about that. But Deion is such a big name, players want to come play for him. People like his vibe, and maybe that's a thing players want from a coach is a great vibe, and I'm not going to hate against that. But I do think it is weird that he only has 8 high school commits and doesn't really care too much about high school recruiting. But who knows, it is a new college football landscape and everything is changing, and I am excited to see what Colorado can do in 2024. Because if they take a step up, can we realistically say Deion Sanders is a bad coach? I don't know. It's hard to know because of how big of a name he is. Everything is going to get overlooked when we talk Deion Sanders because Deion Sanders is just different from other coaches. This next person says Ole Miss will go 8-4 and they will be overrated until LSU beats them. And honestly, I cannot get behind this hot take at all. The only thing that makes sense here is LSU beating Ole Miss, which could happen because LSU has that game at home. But let's not forget Ole Miss finished last season with an 11-2 record and they actually beat LSU. I don't think you could realistically predict a world where Ole Miss only goes 8-4 because they return a lot of talent on offense and now they add Juice Wells from South Carolina at receiver and the defense brings in a bunch of big-time transfer portal additions and they have the #1 transfer portal class in the country. How can they go 8-4 when they just went 11-2 last season and completely upgraded their roster? Maybe they lose 2 or 3 games because they have a difficult schedule, but I'm personally very high on Ole Miss, and I would be very shocked if they lost 4 games. That game against LSU could go either way in my opinion though, but talent-wise I think Ole Miss might have the advantage because LSU has a lot to clean up on defense. But I do like the pickup at defensive coordinator with Blake Baker, and hopefully Harold Perkins can become a beast on the defensive side for LSU. I think LSU and Ole Miss are both sleeper teams to win the SEC if they could put it all together, but Ole Miss is not going 8-4. This next person says California versus Miami will be the game of the year. This is a very interesting hot take. That game on October 5th in Berkeley, California could be a fun one. Morrd knows what it's like to play against teams on the West Coast, but this time he will be playing for the Miami Hurricanes in the ACC. These two teams are going to have very fun offenses, and California is a big sleeper team in my opinion. They returned Jaden Ott, a running back who doesn't get talked about enough, but he's a beast. Cal is top 15 in the country for returning production, and they are also using the transfer portal at a very high level, with the 6th best class in the Pac-12 last year, and now the 4th best class in the ACC this year. I think people are sleeping on the trend of this California team, and they are getting overlooked. 4-8 in 2022, they won 6 games and made a bowl game in 2023, and Justin Wilcox is adapting to the new landscape of college football, and he's utilizing the transfer portal very well. Do not be surprised if California wins 8 or 9 games next season, because the offense is going to be very dangerous. And Miami is also trending up in my opinion, and they have dominated the ACC in recruiting, and they have a 2024 win total of 9.5. It is definitely time for Miami to contend for an ACC title, definitely with Morrd at quarterback. This game between Miami and Cal could be a fun one. Game of the year, I don't know, but it could be an underrated game with a bunch of awesome highlights. I'm going to read one more hot take for this video, and this last person says, Notre Dame has a shot at the Natty, and if Notre Dame wants a shot at a national championship, the offense is going to have to be elevated to a different level. They have some of the tools necessary to have a top offense in the country, but can they put it all together in 1 year is the question. Marcus Freeman is still a young coach, and I do still think he's got growing pains to go through before he can hit his full potential. But Mike Denbrock being your offensive coordinator is huge, and imagine if he could stay long term for this team. Not like 10 plus years, but I'm talking 5 years. He was the offensive coordinator for LSU last season, and LSU had a top 3 offense in the country that had Heisman quarterback Jaden Daniels. Now Notre Dame adds Riley Leonard at quarterback and 3 solid receivers out of the transfer portal. They have potential, but everything would have to click on the offensive side. Notre Dame does lose a decent amount of production, and they rank 74th in the country for returning production. But I expect Notre Dame to have a great defense at the very least, and the offense does have potential. I think they take another step up in 2024, but I do not know if they are quite on the level of Georgia or Ohio State. I think that they could be in that Tier 2 national title contender, but I don't know about Tier 1, because a lot would have to go their way. But like I said, Mike Denbrock being your offensive coordinator is huge, and you have some big pieces on the offense next season, so we will see. Anything can happen in college football, and I don't think this Notre Dame team is a fluke heading into next season. I think they're a serious team, and I don't think they're overrated. But anyways, that's going to do it for today's hot takes. Let me remind you guys to like the video and also subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. And if you guys love college football, then you will love this channel, because we upload a ton of college football content and we basically cover everything on this channel. So definitely consider subscribing, and also consider joining my Discord server down in the description below. But that is going to do it guys, and peace out.